Hello, friends, and welcome to another live edition of Syracuse Sports. We've been doing a bunch of these lately, and we have reason to do one again, as it appears. Welcome back, GMac. Gerry McNamara is in line to take over at Syracuse men's basketball for the fired Adrian Autry, a former Orange Star, a former Orange assistant, the head coach at Siena the past couple of years. It looks like Gerry is coming home to take over Syracuse basketball. We are going to discuss that. We are going to hear from our Syracuse Sports Insiders throughout this program, because being a Syracuse Sports Insider gives you direct text message access to me anytime, and it is a great time to be an insider as there is so much happening here. It's been pointing to this. There was a new chancellor announcement, of course, with Mike Haney in recent weeks. We just met new Syracuse athletic director Brian Blair in recent days, but it was all pointing to this. The biggest decision that Brian Blair, the new AD, could make, that Mike Haney could make. He's got a lot of things on his plate as the new chancellor at Syracuse University, but the men's basketball coach position, and this is no knock on football, but the men's basketball coach position, that is the front-facing position, possibly in the entire university, right? Just because of the legacy of Jim Boeheim, what Syracuse basketball means, and how it did not work with Adrian Autry, and what a major decision this was going to be, and the circumstances of it with all the new faces coming in, and Brian Blair in particular having to make this decision, which may decide and be his legacy as the athletic director at Syracuse for however long he stays at Syracuse. That's how important this hire was. And it appears that Syracuse has kept it in the family, and Gerry McNamara is coming back. So we're going to hear from our insiders on this. We're going to go to the secret voicemail line on this. I know a lot of you are buzzing about it here today. I do want to stress, though, that as we speak here, we are live at 5:54 Eastern Time on Sunday evening. Hope you guys are having a great weekend, by the way. This is not done. The wording on the story, both from Pete Thamel of ESPN, which we have independently verified at syracuse.com, our Mike Waters and Donna DeToda, is that they are finalizing a deal. They are talking about a deal. Syracuse and Gerry McNamara are not over the finish line yet. As we speak, this is still a back and forth. This is still dotting I's and crossing T's. It looks like it's happening. If the reports are getting out there, if the national reports are saying it, what we've been able to verify to this point at syracuse.com, barring something just completely falling apart, Gerry McNamara is going to be the next head coach at Syracuse. But it's important to note that as we speak here, and some of you may be watching or listening to this at a point when it is finalized and it is done, but as I am speaking live here on Sunday evening, they have not signed the deal, but it appears we are very far down that road, and this is the direction that Syracuse is going to go in. I have so many thoughts on this because we've been talking about it really for weeks, and now it is just about come to fruition here. Throughout the process of when it became clear that Syracuse was going to fire Adrian Autry, when Syracuse's season went south, when it appeared that they were not going to make the NCAA tournament, they were not going to play the meaningful games in March, that came from athletic director John Wildhack, now retiring outgoing athletic director John Wildhack, but that was from really the start of Autry's tenure, not just the start of this season. But when it became clear they were not going to make it, and they were not going to make the tournament, and we started going through candidates and names and the direction that Syracuse had to go in, the big discussion that we had was whether or not Syracuse would keep it in the family or not. And a point that I made throughout those discussions throughout the entire year was that it would behoove Syracuse to go outside the family, that there are a lot of great coaches in college basketball, and they could not, simply just hand it to, and the reference I kept making throughout the year was just, you can't give it to the next person in line to take over the family grocery store. Syracuse basketball has a family feel to it, and I can understand why people just wanted to see that happen no matter what. But there was a process that had to play out here. You had to really do your due diligence, go out there and see if somebody outside the family could come in and revitalize Syracuse basketball. That's just smart decision-making. That's what any athletic director should do. As we mentioned, there are a lot of big names out there, a lot of good coaches that Syracuse really had to consider. but you also had to let the process play out. And one thing I always came back to in those discussions, even though I said my preference would be that Syracuse would go outside the family, you guys know, if you listen to this pod, if you read me on syracuse.com, our insiders certainly know that my top choice was Bryan Hodgson at South Florida. But again, this is why you go through the process and the things that flush out, right? What I said throughout that was, if it turned out that Gerry McNamara was the best business decision for Syracuse University, for the new AD, in this case, that we now know is Brian Blair, all things considered, best coach, best business decision. In this era where we talk about NIL and the buzzword has been resources, right? What kind of resources would the new coach at Syracuse get to turn around the program, whether that was in the family or not? And who would be the best person to raise those resources? Who would really not only bring money to the table that's not there now, maybe bring back some old money to the table, just all things considered, who would put Syracuse in the best position to compete, to be in the top level? And what we're hearing, Pete Thamel reported this, I have heard this is really, there's top third of the ACC with the teams that made the tournament, with the teams that are in line to win the national championship, right? We're talking top 5 or 6 in the ACC in terms of NIL spending is what Syracuse is ready to commit for Gerry McNamara. Would they have been able to get that with a Bryan Hodgson? Would they have been able to get that with Josh Schertz at St. Louis, who we're going to talk about here in a minute, because it appears Syracuse made a real push to try to get Josh Schertz from St. Louis, even though he recently agreed to a contract extension at St. Louis. But again, devil's in the details. Did he sign that deal, right? Did Syracuse, and it appears they did, at least can, roll over on their pillow at night and say, we tried to get him. Again, that's a process. That's due diligence. Gerry McNamara should not be offended by that, although Gerry McNamara has been second choice a lot in his life, and all he's done is prove people wrong in that discussion. Time after time after time. And now he gets to do it again here at Syracuse, as we'll discuss here, right? But it appears that Syracuse did make Josh Schertz say no. Josh Schertz was the top candidate on the board, would be a home run hire for Syracuse, I think would bring in some resources, some NIL money from all matters of donors. He is a more accomplished coach. No offense to Gerry, but that's, if you could get Josh Schertz, you had to. Bryan Hodgson is still, as much as I think would be a good coach, there's still some debate there. He's only been a head coach for 3 years. He turned around Arkansas State. He turned around South Florida, got them into the tournament this year. Of course, they just played down the road in Buffalo, losing to Louisville on Thursday in the NCAA tournament. But I could get why some people are still questioning whether he could do it. Now he goes to Providence, where reports are he's going to get around $12 million in NIL money. Now think about that. Syracuse, whether you wanted him or not, lost a candidate to Providence, and Providence, which remember, doesn't have to pay for football. Basketball is everything at Providence. Not that it's not at Syracuse, but Syracuse has a few more things going on than Providence. That's not a surprise for me to hear that they're going to throw $12 million in NIL in this era at Providence in that situation, right? Doesn't surprise me at all. But it's still, from an image standpoint, you're like, man, he was one of the top guys on the board. There was a time when Syracuse would have their pick of the litter, would just say, yes, you're going to coach here. And of course I will, right? But the fact that it's even a discussion, the fact that they did, air quotes, lose out to him, although we need to talk about that in terms of just how much of a candidate Hodgson really was. There were certainly a lot of people, again, myself included, mea culpa, that felt he was the top candidate on the board. But how much did Syracuse even want him? Did they even offer him the job? And there was some semantics with that we need to go over, right? But the point being that you're in the discussion for these top-level candidates. So did Syracuse, and it appears they did, by the way, get in touch with the top candidates and at the very least make them say no or figure it out, go through the process, and where they would be in that? Gerry McNamara appears to be the best decision on all fronts, because this is not just a coming home story. This is not just keeping it in the family, though those things, guys, I know that college sports is a business. It has been and is now more than ever a cold hard business. What are we talking about here? NIL, resources, spending money, buying players, right? This has just become professional sports. But there is still room for a feel-good story. There is still room to tap into an emotional connection. People more than ever, still want to feel an emotional connection, particularly in college, with the teams that they root for. How many people have yearned for the old days of the Big East or yearned for memories that, look, Gerry McNamara is not going to automatically bring back, but stirs a certain emotion of what it felt like to be a Syracuse basketball fan at a time when it was at its peak and at its best. That matters in sports, and that does have to be factored into the equation. I can understand why people would want just a cold hard business decision, just get the best damn coach and hire him. Totally get that. And that's where my mind was for a while. But we can't forget emotions and heart, and that leads to spending money, by the way. What you invest in, what you believe in, that's being filtered out of college sports. People have had that complaint with Syracuse being in the ACC. It just feels like a sterile business transaction. Yes, they get the TV money. Yes, they've got to pay for football. And the fact that people want to go back to the Big East and just give up on football is a completely ridiculous discussion I don't even want to have. But man, I get it. I get, especially those of you that went through it with Gerry and know what he means to the program and know what that meant to the program and understand that and feel that. You want to feel something again as a Syracuse basketball fan. Gerry McNamara brings that back. So let's combine that with he's a hell of a coach. I mean, to take Siena from 4 wins to on the brink of knocking off Duke, the number 1 overall seed. Mind you, Duke had a couple of key injuries in that game, but give me a break. Siena was playing 5 guys in that game and took Duke to the brink of being the 3rd number 16 seed to knock off a 1. By the way, it's not just that one game, but that was Gerry's biggest audition. If you didn't watch Siena basketball, if you weren't a fan of the MAC throughout the season, right? Yeah, you knew Gerry was out there, and we had certainly written stories, and you kind of keep tabs on what's going on. But unless you're just a junkie, right? Unless you're just a sicko, how many people are watching a MAC basketball game on a random Wednesday night? Not even MAC, M-A-C, M-A-A-C, right? The tournament is where you get your biggest audition. The tournament is where coaches are made. The tournament is where you learn about, oh, who's the guy at George Mason who takes George Mason to the Final Four and then goes on to a bigger job? Jim Larinaga, just one example, right? Gerry nailed that audition. John Shire, after that game, Gerry McNamara outcoached me, right? By the way, John Shire, the coach at Duke, that's the best case scenario for Gerry McNamara. Gerry comes home, where he was passed over for Adrian Autry 3 years ago, let's not forget, which we need to get into. But the best case scenario is, as Shire was there, groomed, took over for Coach K, they are still Duke basketball. That's the best case scenario. The worst case scenario for Gerry is he's Kenny Payne. Louisville brings him home. That program absolutely fell apart. They had to move on. They're right back at it, though, with a new coaching hire. So Louisville is like the best and worst case scenario in a way, because Louisville recognized that, made a change, brought in the best guy. Now, the second guy they brought in was not an alum. Syracuse has now gone back-to-back alums with Adrian Autry, with Gerry McNamara, and when you factor in Jim Boeheim, right? Someone from the outside has not coached Syracuse since Roy Danforth in the mid-1970s, who came from Tulane, okay? If Gerry's the best business decision, combined with X's and O's, plus the fan support, because let's face it, I understand there's a lot of people on social media, on podcasts, and things of that nature that just wanted Syracuse to get outside the Boeheim family tree, and that's it. But you got to remember, there's a lot of people that are not on social media. There's a lot of people that are fans in their own way, and this will galvanize them. This will motivate them. And again, the hope is, with Brian Blair being brought in as the athletic director at Syracuse with a financial background, a strong fundraising background, that you turn that into dollars. And I'm not just talking about big donors, $1 million plus donors, right? Brian Blair brought this up at his opening press conference about we need everybody, right? People that buy popcorn and sodas and T-shirts. It's all going to the same place. Now, Syracuse was still 6th in the country in attendance this year, which is nothing to sneeze at. Attendance is down dramatically at the Dome, not only from the glory days, but just from the last 10 years. The numbers they were reporting were tickets sold. They were not butts and seats, and you've got to get those people back in. So Gerry McNamara, in that sense, is a business decision. Whether he'll be the best X's and O's coach, well, it's going to help Gerry to be the best X's and O's coach if he truly is going to get this NIL budget that's being reported out there, that he could put a number on it, right? I think a really good coach with what Syracuse spent this year, which was reportedly somewhere around $7-8 million, would have got that team in the tournament. The problem with Syracuse this year was not resources. Alex Klein, the general manager, who I still wish was part of this program, frankly. If Gerry's coming back, then why are you firing Alex Klein? I mean, Gerry should be able to hire his own guy. I understand that. But Alex Klein built a roster that was NCAA tournament worthy this year, which is, there's so many questions and side conversations that come off this. Who on this current roster will be retained and want to play for Gerry? Which, think about this, kids. Gerry McNamara could quite possibly coach his teammate's son, Carmelo Anthony's kid. They win a national championship hand in hand in 2003, and now Gerry very likely will be coaching his son at Syracuse. What a story. And I just felt about 20 more gray hairs grow on my head. That's another thing to bring up, though. Gerry does span generations. There are certain players like Carmelo, like Gerry, like Coleman, like Sherman Douglas, like Lawrence Moten, God rest his soul. Like, go through the names that span generations. But I want to go back to that feel thing, okay? I actually went through this a couple years ago with my daughter, because my daughter came very close to going to Siena when she was looking at colleges a couple years ago. And, of course, Gerry's coaching there. And I remember having a conversation with my daughter. She's like, well, what's the big deal with Gerry? Like, you know, I've heard about him, but she didn't feel it. She didn't know it. You can watch YouTube videos. You can hear aunts and uncles and grandmas and grandpas and moms and dads and, you know, people that experienced Gerry McNamara and Carmelo Anthony and that whole thing, but they didn't live through it. Think of this current generation of fans. Think if you are a student at Syracuse University. You went through, in recent years, a freshman to senior cycle when you didn't see Syracuse basketball make the NCAA tournament. That is unheard of. That is, they would, I think, guarantee that in your tuition, room, board, books, Syracuse is going to the tournament. Couldn't do it the last few years. So this generation has to experience and feel it for themselves, not just live off the stories of the past, which some people would say, well, then why are you just bringing somebody back from the past? I think it's a fair point to make. There's a lot that Gerry's going to have to prove, but it just feels like he'll have so much more on his side with people that do remember that and will donate money because of that. We'll reinvest in the program. Again, look, resources is an important discussion here, but I'm not just talking about big money donors. I'm talking about fans that didn't go to as many games as they used to. And people have reasons for that. People have lives. People have, you know, look, have you seen your national grid bill lately? People don't have as much money to invest in things like sports, to go to them and experience. It's expensive to go to games and park and experience that as a fan when you can just sit at home and watch it. That has never been a bigger debate. You know, some people just don't have the money to do that as much as they used to. That's a real thing. But what you have to do is overcome that as much as you can. So Gerry McNamara, the business decision, to me is fascinating, and it kind of panned out that he was the one. But I do want to note this, okay? Matt in Orlando writes this. We had heard this as well, and this has been going around really the past couple of days. I've been sharing some of this with our Syracuse Sports Insiders. And I just want to read you a portion of what Matt in Orlando, very tapped in, great college basketball reporter for CBS, wrote today. Saying this, sources said that Syracuse showed significant interest in other candidates, most prominently St. Louis coach Josh Schertz, in the lead up to the NCAA tournament. St. Louis announced on March 13th that it agreed to terms of a new contract, but with the buyout being somewhat manageable, Syracuse pursued all options before landing on McNamara. One source telling New Orlando that Syracuse was still making a push on Schertz, even after St. Louis's first round win over Georgia late Thursday night, which, remember, they were in Buffalo. They were close by through all this. As New Orlando goes on to say, I'm told Syracuse is hopeful. Now, hopeful is an interesting word. It can raise more than $9 million total in NIL budgeting for the upcoming 26-27 season, with at least $4.5 million of that coming from revenue sharing. McNamara will have the support he needs to try and turn things around in Central New York, right? So they did make a push for Josh Schertz, which is smart. Make the top candidates say no to Syracuse. And if not, you've got an intriguing candidate who brings all levels to this thing. X's and O's, fan support, money support. Some of our insiders will say, and I think a lot of people feel this way, you'd rather fail with Gerry than fail with somebody else. Try it again, and if you're keeping it in the family, doesn't work, okay, then you hit the reset button here. And I think Brian Blair, the new AD at Syracuse, is in a very interesting position here because he comes in right away, knows how important the decision is, and if this all pans out and everything gets signed, as we appear to be well down the road of doing, at the very least, it could say, okay, I tried it your way. We went with your guy. We went with the emotional and business decision. Let's say it doesn't work out. Now we do it my way, right? It almost feels like that was probably the better approach for Brian Blair to kind of ease into this thing as opposed to coming in and just, it's his athletic department now and they hired him for a reason, right? But you don't come in and just completely hit the reset button on this thing. Get people on your side emotionally, and then if it doesn't work, you'll be like, see, we tried it that way. Now we're going to try it my way. Gerry got passed over 3 years ago for Adrian Autry to take over for Jim Boeheim. And some people felt like that was not the right decision. And the fact that he is going to get a second chance to prove that is fascinating to me. But I think Gerry McNamara, we'll see if it works. We'll see if it pans out. But I think Gerry McNamara might have a unique advantage over Adrian Autry here. Now, Autry's a little older than McNamara. He was an assistant coach, longer than McNamara. Adrian Autry was handed the keys to a program while in decline, and certainly he came in right when NIL was surging and college basketball was changing, and he, even in some of his final statements as head coach, basically admitted how much he struggled to adapt to that. Gerry McNamara got to go to Siena and basically go to head coach school for a couple years. He did not step into a high-level, high-pressure ACC program. He got to go down the road and do it his way in essentially what is the minor leagues of college basketball. Build a program, prove he can do it. Takes Siena, who just a couple years ago, 4-28. Now, when you look at the record, Gerry was 37-30 at Siena, 14-18 in his first year, 23-12 this past year. You're like, what's up with that? He was barely a 500 coach. But when you know what the dynamics of that are, what he had to turn around, Siena's got some resources for that league. They're not exactly poor by MAC standards, but not what he's going to get here, right? It just reminds of, as talented as you are, sometimes you got to work it out in the minors. When I watch Roman Anthony play in Syracuse with the Worcester Woo Sox, I'm like, that guy is a Major League Baseball player. We all knew it. When Steven Strasburg pitched in Syracuse, when Bryce Hop, I know I'm making a bunch of baseball references here, but you can watch these guys like, I know that guy's a Major League Baseball player, but there's just certain things they got to work out in the minors. I think most of us, when Gerry McNamara played here, we're like, that guy's going to be a head coach someday. But sometimes you got to work it out in the minors first. You got to learn what it's like to be a head coach, the decision-making, dealing with donors, dealing with the media, dealing with families, right? Especially now with fundraising and all the hats that you wear. Being a head coach of of any basketball program, particularly one that you're about to take over at Syracuse, but any basketball program, is a CEO role. There's so many things that you do, that you delegate, that you decide on, not to mention the decision-making in game and how your team plays, that you just don't do as an assistant. Gerry got to do that for 2 years. Now, would Josh Schertz be a better choice there because he's done it longer and some other names we can go over? We can have that discussion. We'll see how that all plays out, right? But yes, Gerry got passed over 3 years ago, and there's got to be this feeling of, man, I was the second choice then. You were kind of the second choice now. If Syracuse worked out a deal with Schertz, he'd be the coach right now. So if you're Gerry, you kind of have to get over that again, right? Like, I don't think I was like the all-in choice here, but it's also a job you can't turn down, right? You get to prove, once again, little chip on your shoulder. Once again, you wanted that Josh Schertz guy? I'm going to show you. There's just some people that work better in those conditions. Gerry has always been doubted and always plays better and coaches better with just that little chip on his shoulder. A little 16 seed with only 5 guys is going to push the number 1 overall seed in the tournament. Yeah, good luck with that. They almost did it. So he went to head coach school for a few years. I watched Siena a bunch this year, and I saw an offense that was more organized, more detailed, had more structure that I could follow than anything I saw Autry run this year. Gerry's defenses are relentless. They embody the spirit of their head coach. Any good team embodies the spirit of their head coach. Unfortunately, any bad team does as well. Okay? The coach vicariously, the team, kind of, I don't want to say vicariously, it's not the right word, but you know what I mean? Like you build an image of your team. They play the way that they are coached. That connection is forged, and you are what your coach is. Look at St. John's and Rick Pitino. Look at UConn and Danny Hurley, and we can go over various examples of this. Gerry had the advantage at Siena that if we're going to do this thing, we got to win this league, right? And the process of being a mid-major, a lower-level program. Can you get Syracuse basketball to play that way? Because I just gave a couple examples of Rick Pitino's got a nice budget at St. John's. That team plays games like they are the 365th rated team in the country. Danny Hurley is, and I mean this with all love in my heart, he is a psycho on the sidelines. His teams, even with the budget, the NIL, the recognition, the national championships they've won, the Final Fours they've been to, it's such a year in, year out change now that you have to get teams to play with the spirit of their coach year in and year out, which is harder to do with the roster transition that's going on. I'm encouraged by how Gerry's teams played. We only saw a couple years of it. And can he bring that grit and that style of play to the ACC? It's one thing to put that plan together for one game, for Siena to take out Duke, where magic happens in the tournament. Can you do it night in and night out in the ACC? Can you do that 17 times in the ACC? Can you do that in the middle of a Las Vegas 3-game stretch where you're playing Houston, Kansas, and Iowa State? From what I saw in Gerry, I'd like to see him do that, right? Gavin Doty, big name, Fulton kid. What a story that's going to be. I don't think there's any doubt. I would never speak for anybody here, but I think this kind of works out. The kid from Fulton, New York, gets to come home and play for Gerry McNamara, a coach he loves playing for, in Syracuse. Like, I think that's going to work out. Is he going to bring Doty with him? I mean, of course he is, right? Barring something not working out that, sometimes these things break down. But watch that kid play against Duke and give it everything he has. And I think he proved that he can come in and almost be what Gerry was 20 years ago as a player. And I think he can hang in the ACC. I wasn't sure about that. I'll be honest with you. But in the biggest audition possible, he proved that, along with Gerry as a coach. Will Ryan Blackwell and Arenze Onuaku come with Gerry to Syracuse? Why wouldn't you, right? Now, would Orion Blackwell get an interview to be the next Siena head coach? I think so. I don't believe they're going to hire him. I think there's another assistant coach on that roster that Siena is going to go for. It was the first coach that Gerry hired on that staff. Why am I forgetting his name off the top? I've got it right here. Give me a sec here, guys. But I think they're going to go with a different assistant that's on that staff right now and not go with either Blackwell or Arenze Onuaku, which brings something interesting to mind, by the way. One thing that Syracuse fans have talked about a lot, whether you agree or disagree with this, is they've never had a big man coaching the big men. They've had guards on these staffs coaching big men. So if Arenze Onuaku comes in and he's coaching the big men on this roster, how many fans are just going to say hallelujah to that, right? Why wouldn't you bring your staff? Which, by the way, did you see, what am I thinking? In the discussion for Brian Hodson, he had a pretty big staff at South Florida. When Duke comes to town, have you seen the staff they bring? And I know Duke's the top level here, but have you seen the staff they bring in? Gerry can not only bring Ryan Blackwell and Arenze Onuaku with him, he can hire more assistant coaches. Now remember, when we talk about resources, it's not just NIL. It's assistant coaches, it's revenue share, it's all the resources not just NIL. That's the most important thing. It's all the resources, right? So I would expect them to come. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you take that step up? And it kind of adds to that feel-good story again. Some people are like, you're just keeping it in the family, same guys. Hey, if you feel that way, I don't blame you. I really don't. Some people wanted to see a fresh start, but if you're going to go all in on this and bring people in that have skin in the game, you might as well do it on the staff too. You just go all in on that. Push in on that. They did with Autry too. It didn't work, right? Where Autry had some success was when they had to recalibrate a little bit, right? Now, Alex Klein is a Syracuse guy, but when they had to recalibrate a little bit, make some changes on the staff, that's, the outside voices count. The new trainer they brought in this year, not everybody, it's a whole new staff they're going to hire, but there is something to that. So if it's not certain positions, maybe there's other outside voices that can come in and assist in the process. Before I get to some Syracuse Sports Insiders and what you guys had to say about this, I do want to address this because a lot of you have asked about this, and I think it's fair to ask about this because with all these discussions about resources and NIL money, well, Brent, does that mean that Adam Weitsman is going to be back in the fold, right? For those of you that don't remember, need a refresher, Adam Weitsman, of course, scrap king, billionaire, Instagram sensation, social media sensation, entrepreneur, just taken over the world of social media and a number of businesses, of course, would sit courtside, brought a number of big name athletes and celebrities from Tom Brady, Jimmy Fallon, Josh Allen, Giannis Antetokounmpo, go through all the names that would sit courtside and the attraction that brought to Syracuse basketball in that time before that relationship soured between Weitsman, the chancellor, the outgoing chancellor at Syracuse, Ken Severud, and some other people at Syracuse just kind of got sick of the dog and pony show, and that relationship broke up. For those of you that are saying, because Adam Weitsman did give money to Gerry at Siena, did give some money locally to Lemoyne, to Binghamton, and some other programs. I would say this. If Adam Weitsman is going to come back into the fold, then he's got to give real money to players. If he wants to do this celebrity thing again, they can have that discussion. What I don't think people realize is he wasn't giving the level of money to the athletes to consider him a serious donor. Now, to be fair, it was a few years ago, and I think when the market was changing, had he stuck around, he would have the opportunity to do this. So I want to be fair about that. But if they're going to bring back Weitsman, give money to players. And I'm talking real money to players. Not the dog and pony show, not the Instagram show. I don't care who sits courtside. We did that. We tried that. Don't care. You want to bring Josh Allen and sit courtside again? As a Bills fan, I would certainly love that. I don't care about that. Give money to players, to NIL. If you're coming back, then come back. We'll see if that's the case. But we can't fixate just on Weitsman. There are a number of donors. What we should be asking is who else comes into the fold that are not as high profile as Adam Weitsman. Adam Weitsman's done a good job getting his name out there to the fact that most people watching and listening to this know who he is and are asking me as soon as Gerry came back in the fold, he's going to bring Weitsman with him, and that's a credit to him. But there are so many other donors out there, not just high-level donors, but all manner of donors. Let's ask about them. Are they going to come back? Or not only come back, who can you get because of Gerry, who's not donating now, has been hesitant to donate, that has not been a part of this thing for one reason or the other. Maybe they didn't believe in Autry. Maybe they saw what happened and maybe they soured on, I don't know. I'm just throwing ideas off the top of my head. But let's not fixate on one guy. Adam Weitsman is not a silver bullet who is going to come in and solve all of Syracuse's NIL problems. He's free to prove me wrong there. Go right ahead, man. You got $10 million you want to throw at this thing. Not going to stop you. But let's not fixate on one guy who's good at getting attention for himself. Let's ask the question broadly. Who else is Gerry bringing back to the mix? Because, as I said to start the show, and I will say throughout this process, it's not just the feel-good story of Gerry coming home. Gerry McNamara appears to be the best business decision for Syracuse basketball as their new head coach, if and when that gets over the finish line, which, again, as we speak here, is not done yet. But I think we're far enough down the road where this thing is happening. Whew! I've said a lot. And by the way, we were supposed to do a lacrosse post-game show tonight. Sorry to the lacrosse fans out there. Things changed, right? I was really looking forward to that, by the way. Syracuse beat Georgetown today at the Dome, 18-12. Michael Leo had 5 goals. Joey Spallina, 2 goals, 4 assists. Interesting game. Syracuse, I'll stop talking lacrosse because you guys want to talk hoops, but that's what we were supposed to do tonight. And we will do those lacrosse post-game shows, I promise. I promise. It was supposed to start tonight. Things kind of blew up. We did one for women's basketball after Iowa State. We will do one Monday night after Syracuse and UConn as well. But I'll tell you about that before we exit stage left for the evening. Okay. I want to hear from our insiders because you guys have been chomping at the bit on this throughout, and certainly when the news flushed out today about this. So let me take a pause, wet the whistle a little bit here. All right. Being a Syracuse Sports Insider gives you direct text message access to me anytime. Your questions, your comments, what you want me to ask players and coaches, what you're hearing. I had people on our insider text line today tipping me about Gerry McNamara, people that had sources, people that had information about this, saying, hey, I'm hearing this. And it's like, good stuff because you guys are the best. So become a part of our growing community of some of the more passionate Syracuse sports fans out there today. There's never been a better time to be a Syracuse Sports Insider than now, for sure. As Matty S. leads us off saying, it seemed like it was Gerry's job to lose. I do have a lot of questions swirling in my head about who is supporting who for coach. Now I'm curious who GMac keeps from this year's team. That's a great question. Can you get a Sadiq White back? Nate Kings is trying to get another year of eligibility. I do think he's going to get that year of eligibility. Just to educate a guess on my part, I don't know for sure. You would want to see him come back should he get that extra year. Kyan Anthony, look, you'd rather keep him than not. I think Kyan's got a lot to prove as a player. I think his offensive efficiency's got to get better. I think his defense has to get better. But you can't let Carmelo's kid go somewhere else when it's Gerry coaching the team, nor do I think he will. I think Carmelo would certainly be all in on Gerry coaching his kid, but there's another name right there. Then you get into like a Tyler Betsy. Then you get into a Akir Soare, right? Wasn't long ago that Gerry was not recruiting some of these names, but recruiting for Syracuse. I think he can make those players work. We brought up Doty. He's probably going to bring a couple more of his guys from Siena. But the good news about this is Gerry is in place. Again, should everything get over the finish line as we think. March 22nd. The portal opens April 7th. You can come in. You can hire some people. You can have a plan and attack when the portal opens. I'm going to bring this up again. I have no idea whether he would want to do this. But with all the talk, and there was absolutely a contingent, a faction, if you will, of people at Syracuse that wanted Mike Hopkins back, which I never felt was a good idea as coach, because I think I saw it at Washington, one tournament, 7 years, just there were just better candidates. And I love Mike Hopkins. Mike Hopkins would be an absolute pleasure to deal with as head coach. I think Gerry will be as well. And I get it from a certain standpoint, but I just feel like in the here and now, there were just better names, Gerry McNamara included. By the way, we're going to go down this road. Gerry was the better choice as coach. Can I just throw this out there? And a lot of you have even asked me about this. I brought it up to our insiders. Mike Hopkins, general manager. Yeah, let that sink in. He's been doing this as kind of an assistant personnel guy in the NBA the past couple of years. He's still tapped into the game enough. I don't think you're going to see Mike get another head coaching job in this cycle. Look, if he likes his life in the NBA and he's making good money and there's always personal things that go into these decisions, right, then, hey, no harm, no foul. But if Mike was really intent on coming back here and that faction that wanted him back, well, they got an opening at general manager. Think of Gerry and Mike Hopkins working hand in hand in that way. Just throwing it out there. Think that would be an interesting idea. Just see how that goes. From Doug, says, can Gerry lead a big program back? That doesn't just depend on him. Hopefully the groundswell of support for him gets the fan base energized and drives attendance and donations. From Harrison, who says, I'm also incredibly excited, assuming he brings that staff, to have Arenze back on the bench. I feel like he's going to be an incredible big man coach. Pete R. says this, I think along with probably 80% of the fans, wanted to see Gerry get the job over Red 3 years ago. Fast forward to today. The job he did against Duke was masterful. Now, do I think Gerry is a better coach than Red? 100%. That being said, bringing him in after wiping out the entire staff, including Alex Klein, it could be tough to win in year one. That is an interesting point that Pete makes, because we are in the era of college basketball where you can win in year one. Look at Ryan Odom at Virginia. Virginia was a 15-17 team last year, comes in, top level team in the ACC this year, in the tournament, instant turnaround. Helped to have some NIL money to spend as well, which is always kind of the X factor in these things. But Pat Kelsey did it at Louisville, right? Rick Pitino did it at St. John's. So what is the patience level of Gerry McNamara, first-year coach at Syracuse? Now, no one's saying you've got to make the tournament next year, but we are in an era where if you're going to spend $9-10 million, you're going to be in the top third of the ACC, and you can instantly flip a roster and make it tournament-worthy in one transfer portal cycle. Well, that pressure will be there to get there in year one, right? Which I think is fair pressure, by the way. It's 5 years and counting of this program not being in the tournament, which Jerry's got to own a little bit. As much as Red was an assistant on all those teams leading up to Boeheim's retirement, so was Gerry. Let's not forget that, guys. Now, Gerry went away, went to head coaching school, and I think has evolved from those days, but he does have a hand in that. He was an assistant here when the program was sliding off a cliff. Just something to think about. We have a lot of Jim B's and Not That Jim B's. I believe we'll have a voicemail from Not That Jim B coming up, but Not That Jim B says this: the grittiest, hardest working, and probably smartest basketball player in modern Syracuse basketball history. Now you got to give him resources. From Mike C. says, my take is this, driven by as much of the business side of the equation as it was by the coaching side. I think Gerry is a fine coach, and I am happy to see him back, but I am guessing he would not have been option one without his ability to energize, fan, and donation base. I think you're right about that. I think if they could have got Schertz, they would have done it, because I think he would have motivated some people to donate, even though he's not a Syracuse legend. But Jerry's like the absolute next choice in what you're saying there, no doubt about it. From Bud B says, I'm not saying GMac can't be successful. I hope he can. What bothers me is that this is the best we could do, which shows how far our program has fallen. From Kevin, who says, I'm all for GMac taking over at Syracuse. This dude has serious heart and obvious love for Syracuse. And like you mentioned, many of the basketball alums are in his corner. I would rather Syracuse hire Gerry and be wrong than to let him go and be wrong. That's great that a lot of the Syracuse alums, former players, are in his corner. Let's see him be in this corner. Because there's a lot of former players out there that are very vocal, that have the means to donate, and they do not. So let's see them be supportive in this way, too. From Brian B., who says, the 50-year Orange family grocery store succession plan is alive and well. Brent, I don't get it. And a lot of these kind of emojis. From Stephen C., who says, I have my reservations regarding Gerry, needing more seasoning, if you will. This is a safe and cheaper hire than a true big name. This also reeks of Boeheim's clutch over the program. From Justin, who says this, from a fan standpoint, check. From a business standpoint, check. Players coach, check. In this era, his name for Syracuse basketball is almost as big as Boeheim. I think we will all be pleasantly surprised. From Gonzo, says, for the first time in many moons, I'm officially excited about the future of Syracuse basketball. GMac was a great Syracuse player with talent, a big heart, and as courageous as a lion. With the right NIL support, fingers crossed, I think it's finally time for the Cuse resurrection party, right? So look, it's split. I think it's mostly supportive, but it's split. There's some people that just would have rather seen this go another way, go outside the family, close the deal with Schertz. Maybe things broke down with Hodson. It was interesting what happened with Hodson. Okay, he was my strongest candidate. I felt he could come in, turn things around, continue that winning streak that he's been on at Arkansas State and South Florida, particularly with stronger resources. Was he ever offered the job, right? Semantics, how these things got reported out. I think what we saw play out was he was not going to be in consideration, or he did not, and his agent did not like what they heard in terms of an offer for salary, nor the offer for what kind of resources they'd have to spend. Remember the wording of that when it came out last week, that they were out of the consideration. Not that he didn't reach a deal, that he wasn't, like, think of the wording of this. They were out. So they got out before Syracuse could say they were out. They pulled it's not you, it's me. I'm breaking up with you first. You can't fire me. I quit. However you want to put it, right? Like, they kind of slid out of that and got some stuff out there, leaked through some national reporters about, oh, well, Syracuse doesn't have this and doesn't have that, and their NIL budget and their fan base sucks and all sorts of things, right? Which is, you could just read my story. I wrote about attendance. There's no doubt it was down. They weren't wrong about some of these things that they said, but I don't know, for lack of a better term, that whole thing got shady. Hotson's still a hell of a coach. And at Providence with $12 million, he'll win there. In the Big East, and you're not going to knock off UConn, but if you can be in that conversation, you can flip that around to be a 4 or 5 bid league team, and you're one of them at Providence. You can do that with that kind of money and now the right kind of coach. No doubt about it. That's always going to be a reference point, by the way, no matter what you feel about Hodson and how this thing, I'll say it again, I think kind of got a little shady at the end. That's always going to be a reference point. They could have had that guy. They should have got that guy. Schertz is not a should have got guy. Schertz was a tried to get guy. Schertz was I'm going to make you say no. I know what you did at St. Louis. Schertz loves it there, by the way. From everything I understand, I think he's even talked about this. So there's more to it than money. Money, prestige, Syracuse job. What do you say? Well, if your family loves it in St. Louis and you're winning at St. Louis and you can get your team to the tournament at St. Louis, the Atlantic 10's a great basketball league, then some people don't need the bigger boat. Some people don't need the bigger job. Some people, how dare you turn down Syracuse? Some people just are happy where they are. Fact of life, right? That's part of this. There's going to be so much more to talk about going forward, guys. Who Gerry brings in as his assistant coaches, which I think we know a few of the names, but we'll see how it plays out. Who comes in from Siena? Who stays on the roster? Obviously, they're going to hit the portal. What kind of resources? We're hearing certain things, but what would be the real numbers? We'll know by the names they get. We'll know by the players they get. Okay, numbers can be thrown out there and budgets and how much. We'll know by the players they sign. What kind of numbers? What kind of NIL resources Syracuse is throwing behind these things? There's going to be former players, people associated with the program, Jim Boeheim, you name it, that are going to, when this becomes official, it's going to be a Gerry party for the next week or so when all this gets buttoned down, right? And once again, Syracuse basketball starts over with the guy that some people felt they should have done it with 3 years ago. So you don't always get a second chance. You can't always come home again. But it looks like Gerry McNamara is going to get both, as it is in line here. They are finalizing a deal that Gerry McNamara will take over as the next Syracuse men's basketball coach. Going to be so much to talk about that going forward. So please stay in touch in the Syracuse Sports Insider text line here on the Syracuse Sports Podcast. Please subscribe if you haven't on Spotify, Apple, YouTube. Easy to subscribe and keep up with our live shows. But if you can't be a part of our live shows, you can watch and listen on demand when you want. We appreciate that if you guys do subscribe to the podcast, and we'll keep you all up to date on the Syracuse Sports Insider text line as well. Just a couple of programming notes here. Again, my apologies to my lacrosse heads out there. We were going to do a post-game show tonight, but obviously things changed. We are going to be doing some lacrosse post-game shows going forward as Syracuse flips to ACC play. Depending on when you're watching or listening to this, Monday night after Syracuse takes on UConn women's basketball in the NCAA Tournament, we're going to do a live post-game show Monday night. That's a 6 o'clock tip, so about 9 o'clock or so. Monday night, can Syracuse slay the giant? Can they do it? Can they knock off the gold standard, the program in all of women's college basketball? Live post-game show after that. We're certainly going to track the Gerry McNamara story. We'll have some pods if and when there's a press conference and all that fun stuff. We'll be doing that as the week goes along here. Syracuse spring football is underway. They got 2 practices in the books. Javon Edmonds, Chris Carlson, and I will get together and do some football pods for you a few times during spring practice as well. So, as I said, guys, it's busy around here. There's a lot going on, and being a subscriber and a listener to this podcast and a viewer on YouTube and being a Syracuse Sports Insider will keep you all up to date with that. That's going to do it for this live edition, though, of Syracuse Sports, where it appears, welcome back GMac, Gerry McNamara, in line to be the next head basketball coach for Syracuse men's basketball. Thanks for hanging with us tonight. Hope you enjoy the rest of your Sunday evening, and we will talk to you again soon, for sure, here on Syracuse Sports.